Recording.
All right. Welcome everyone to the final day and the final talk of this online retreat. Before I get started, I'm actually going to hand it over to John, and he's going to walk you through some stuff. And then after that, we'll begin with the talk. John, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Delson. Thanks to all of you for participating in this fundraising retreat for freedom of mind, and really appreciate all the wonderful work that all of you have done. And thanks, of course, to Delson and to David for all their hard work. So at the end of the retreat, we are sort of just getting Freedom of Mind launched as a nonprofit, and Delson is also taking some new directions. And so we'll send out a survey at the end of this, and we'd really appreciate any feedback from you on how you found the retreat and your impressions, etc., on that. And also, we're going to have a uh, a fireside chat and a kind of town hall meeting. We're planning it for November 30th. And that will be basically focused on Delson, with some of the Freedom of Mind people also participating as a kind of panel to talk about some interesting topics, and also our where we are with Freedom of Mind and our fundraising drive and so on. So we'll be sending out an announcement about that very soon. So I think that's it from me for now. Thanks very much.
Okay, perfect. You didn't have to share anything on the screen, did you?
No, not right now. We'll send out something after this,
Okay,
but you know.
perfect. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, so this is your final day. This is basically now you are free from this retreat. But are you free from your mind? That is the question, right? Are you going to be able to implement all of the things that you've learned in this practice on a daily basis? There are a few things to remember when it comes to this practice. Three things, really: Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Sila, which is also connected with dana or generosity. What are these? Generosity is essentially being able to provide your wholesome intention to support someone, whether that is through your resources or whether that's as simple as a smile. Be generous, share, be willing to share what you have with others. And it can be food, it can be clothes, it can be your time, it can be your volunteering your time at some shelter. Thanksgiving is coming up in America. So you could take that opportunity to do something like that. And of course, we have Dana, which is for monastics and offering them food, offering them shelter, offering them robes or medicines. And if you can't offer anything, just offer a smile, offer your loving kindness. Tied to this is Sila. Sila is essentially keeping the precepts. The precepts are the foundation for this practice. So the non-negotiables are the five precepts. They are essentially habits that you form in order to recondition your mind into a more wholesome state. So what are the five precepts? Abstaining from harm, abstaining from taking what is not given, abstaining from sexual misconduct, abstaining from false speech, and abstaining from intoxicants. When you do this, it's not because there is some kind of moralistic judge that will now judge you at the end of your life. It is because you understand karma. What you do unto others, or what you do unto yourself, that you do unto others, and vice versa. It's the golden rule. You want to be treated a certain way, You don't want people to harm you. You don't want other people to steal from you. You don't want people to cheat on you. You don't want people to lie to you. And you don't want people to act belligerent when they are intoxicated. So you do your part and you keep these precepts. And the more you do this, you will experience what is known as pamoja. Pamoja is essentially the relief, the non-regret that you experience as a result of keeping these precepts. And this allows for a mind that is collected. But when you sit down for practice, one of the things you can do is to recollect your virtue. In other words, remember the times when you were wholesome. Remember the times when you kept the precepts. Remember the times when you were generous. And this will naturally uplift your mind. And this will therefore naturally collect the mind, anchor the mind, so that when you sit down for practice, when you sit down for meditation, it's very easy for the mind to anchor around an object like loving kindness. Through consistent practice. Now, this is very important to understand. It's not about just practice. Some of the participants who attend these retreats feel like they can just come on retreats and practice, and then when they go back home or they're going back to their daily lives, somehow the practice goes away from them. Life gets in the way. There are things to be done. There's bills to pay. There's children to feed. There's places to go and to commute and so on. But I would urge every one of you to find some time, even if it's 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes, if not an hour or 90 minutes, for yourself. Make that your sacred time and do it every single day. When you do this, the consistency in that practice strengthens the mind, makes it more wholesome day by day. And as a result of which, you start to see that translate into your daily life. The more you're able to practice, the more you're able to see how your mind works. You are your own teacher, and you are your own student. You are teaching yourself how this process works, where craving comes from, how craving arises, how clinging arises, how conceit arises, how any of the five hindrances arise. And when you are able to teach yourself and learn from yourself how this process works, you're able to better navigate through them, better able to recognize them, better able to release your attention from them, better able to relax any tightness and tension, re-smile, and return back to the object if you're meditating or whatever it is, the task it is that you're doing in your daily life. The more you're wholesome, the easier the practice becomes. And the more you are consistent or you have consistency with the practice, the easier it becomes for you to have a wholesome state of mind. So it's a feedback loop system. More wholesome states, more keeping of the precepts, more collected mind. More collected mind means a more attentive mind, a more mindful awareness, which means you're able to better navigate through any kind of unwholesome states and let them go. Eventually, what this leads to is not only you being able to understand how this process of mind works, but ultimately gaining wisdom, understanding how this process works on a very deep level. Because as you traverse through the different levels of meditation, that is from the first jhana all the way up to neither perception nor non-perception, you will then see for yourself how the different formations cease. In the case of the second jhana, the verbal formations cease. In the case of the fourth jhana, the bodily formations cease. Now, some people say that that means that the breathing ceases. I don't believe that, and I don't think that that's accurate. What does happen is that your body becomes so relaxed that you lose contact with the body unless something makes contact with it externally or internally. Like, for example, if your stomach is rumbling, or a fly lands on your hand, or the wind is blowing and you feel it. Otherwise, your mind remains completely in the mind sphere, in the formless, or heads towards the formless. Hence, you know that bodily formations are stilling. And then when you get up to the neither perception, non-perception level, then the mental formations cease. Mental formations allow you to feel and perceive. Mental formations, because every experience that we have, every feeling and perception that we have, ultimately, even though it's experienced through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, is ultimately received at and felt at, experienced at, and perceived at the level of mind. Mind is chief. Mind is the forerunner of all states. So you start to see how this happens. You start to understand the formations that arise, and you start to develop this enchantment. You start to develop this passion. And then when the mental formations cease, you experience the cessation of perception, feeling, cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. So, can you experience cessation from any jhana onwards? Yes, you can. It is quite possible. Might be a little challenging though, because the experience is such that the mind identifies with that experience. So suffice it to say, as long as you keep a consistent practice, your mind will continue to be collected. And at some point in your time, maybe once a week, maybe twice a month, or whatever works for your schedule, you do a weekend long retreat for yourself. Maybe you go to an Airbnb, or you make sure that you're disconnected from any kind of communications and internet, and you do a proper self retreat. And in this self retreat, you can meditate for as long as you can. A lot of you have asked, how long should we meditate for in a retreat? And initially I've said, a maximum of 3 hours. But once you become comfortable with 3 hours, then you can meditate for longer periods of time, especially during retreat and on weekend long retreats. If you can do this, it sets up a rhythm, and your mind gets a greater degree of clarity. And so the panya that arises, which is the insight into the true nature of mind, the true nature of reality, of how this process works, how your craving arises, how the five aggregates arise, how there is the nature of impermanence of the five aggregates, the nature of dukkha, the nature of the impersonal or the five aggregates. When you start to see this, when you see the links of dependent origination, then you have wisdom. And you can recognize and see the links of dependent origination in daily life. If there is one aspect of the Dhamma that you should be tending to, which is the spine, which is the scaffolding of the entire Dhamma, it is the Eightfold Path. I would say that if at some point civilization toppled, which is pretty likely, not maybe in our lifetime, but pretty likely at some point, the Eightfold Path is a way to recreate society, recreate the scaffolding for society to come back. And the reason is because the Eightfold Path has in it everything that you need in terms of ethics, in terms of livelihood, in terms of perspective, in terms of effort, in terms of all of these things. What is the Eightfold Path? Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right effort, right mindfulness, and right collectedness. Right view is twofold. The first aspect is basically understanding how karma arises. When I do something, something happens in return. When I do something good, I feel good. When I do something bad, I feel bad. That right there is a simple understanding of karma. The recognition of the fact that there is the mundane and supramundane. the recognition of the fact that there is mother and father. We must tend to our parents when they're alive, take care of them in whatever capacity we can, because they have provided us this life and this existence in order for us to experience full release or have the potential to experience full release. Right view, supramundane right view, is essentially the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. This leads into right intention, being content. That's what it means, being content, having loving kindness, and having compassion. Think before you speak. That's right speech. Is it true? Or I should say, is it timely? Is it honest or true? What is the intention behind it? Is it necessary for you to say it? And can you say it with kindness? Then right action, which is essentially keeping the precepts. All of these lead to your ability to have right livelihood. Right livelihood is essentially doing any kind of job or business that does not cause harm to yourself or cause harm to others. That's it. Simply put, that's what it is. This allows your mind to have that deep relief, that deep sense of non-regret. Therefore, now you have the tools, right effort, right mindfulness, and right collectedness. Right effort is essentially the 6 R's. The 4 R's are the 6 R's, the practice that you've been doing. That is the heart of the practice. Using the 6 R's, you go from the wrong aspects of the wrong path to the right aspects of the right path. This leads you to have right mindfulness. What is right mindfulness? 2 things. Being here, present right now, and understanding where your mind is in relation to its attention. In other words, very simply put, how mind's attention moves from one place to the other. This is mindfulness, remembering to observe that. When you have that, then mindfulness becomes collectedness, and your mind anchors around an object, and therefore you experience these different jhanic states. As you do this, you develop insight. With insight and this calm clarity, that is to say the jhanas and the vipassana, or the samatha and vipassana, yoked together allows you to experience nibbana. When you experience nibbana, you touch the deepest layer of reality. And you understand the contact that is signless, undirected, and empty. Signless because it's not an object. Undirected because there is no intention in that process. And empty because it is not of any kind of personal, separate self. When you experience this, then you have right knowledge. And that right knowledge is liberating, and therefore you have right liberation. Don't worry about, did you reach path or did you reach fruition? Here's what you should know. How well can you keep the precepts? How much of a better person can you be? And does the insight allow you to liberate from the suffering in this moment? That's what is important more than anything else. Everything else will take care of itself. So when it comes to the lifelong practice is essentially being a good person. Being a good person, causing yourself no harm and causing others no harm. That is the highest you can do in terms of your lifestyle. Now it is up to you and your willfulness to be able to maintain a consistent practice. I was asked on a retreat that what tip or what can you tell me to motivate me to practice consistently? And I said, I cannot give you any tip. I cannot give you any advice because the motivation has to come from within. And that motivation will only come from within when you have enough suffering. So I wish you all enough suffering so that you are motivated to get out of it, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, you're just bored. Maybe you need enough boredom, which is another kind of suffering, to see yourself out of this process. So this practice is essentially these 3 things: sila, samadhi, panya. Keep these 3 things in mind, and you will definitely experience success in the practice. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Joey.
Hi. So this is a meditation question. Hopefully it benefits everyone too. So when we're in equanimity and like we realize like we weren't paying attention to the body at all, and then we sort of come back to it and we notice like your face is sort of very neutral, should we like intend to bring back a slight smile, or does it not matter at that point?
Yeah, when you're in those formless realms, when you smile, it kind of brings you back to the body. So, especially when you get into nothingness and neither perception, non-perception, what I'll say is you recognize that you were disturbed or the mind went somewhere and you relax back into the object. Instead of returning, it's like you're relaxing back into the object because there the object is mind. It's the collected mind, or it's the mind that's radiating equanimity. So at those higher states, the smile doesn't matter as much. Anyone else? Yeah, Ben.
Hey, Delson, thank you very much. So you and I spoke a little bit about this the other day. So to get some clarity, you had in one of the Dhamma talks, you talked about basically like dropping drops of equanimity, in that space kind of between quiet mind and perception, non-perception. And you made the suggestion to me at least, hey, you could actually use that visualizations of drops dropping, right, to facilitate that. And I struggle quite a bit with visualizing, it ends up making more tension.
Mhm.
So can you suggest another way that I can drop the drops without visualizing?
So it's also just the intention, right? Like, okay, you realize that the mind is agitated and restless. So what will work as a antidote against this? The feeling of equanimity. For some people, the visualization is a very calming visualization, right? Because it's, and also, look, I'm not saying to visualize this. I'm using it as an analogy. I'm using it as an analogy, which means it's like the intention is very soft and very gentle. That when you drop it into the lake, it just gently ripples out. So the analogy is when you have that small intention of bringing up equanimity, that in itself ripples through the mind and radiates outward for as long as it wants. And then when it starts to disappear, you have another intention, slight intention of bringing up equanimity, and it does the same thing until it doesn't want to do anything. And then you are in quiet mind proper.
Thank you very much. Can I ask a second question?
Go ahead.
Unrelated. So I saw the day 9 talk from the recordings, and the question came up. It was around non-harming, and what if there's an animal grievously injured? You know,
Yeah.
and I think your response. Well, my understanding was that it's still karmically incorrect to kill that being. Um,
Yeah.
and I understand that, and I find myself in a conundrum with that.
And you'll have to deal with it yourself. Everybody has their own response to it, right? Because we understand that everybody clings to life. Every being clings to life, even in the last moments. So with that understanding, do with it what you would, I would say to anybody who comes through that conundrum.
Thank you.
Yes, Louisa.
Didn't the Buddha say something about, or there is a point where you could do, it's kind of better to kill someone who's, going to wreck their karma, or, there's something like that somewhere in the Dhamma about, at some
I
point,
have not heard of this. I have not
okay,
heard of this actually. So,
I have to be clear on it. I'll have to find it. Thank you.
okay. All right. I think the Buddha has said about killing, and he used it as a very sharp analogy where he said, yes, you should kill. And what you should kill are the unwholesome states of the mind. That's what he was referring to if he was talking about killing in any context. But if you're talking about something else, I'm going to need to see the reference before I can comment, because that seems very unlikely that they would do that. Anyone else?
I think I might
Gavin.
know what Luis is referring to. The story of the Buddha as a bodhisattva, one of the carnations killing, like it was like pirates who were about to attack, a town or something like that, and the bodhisattva killed the captain to basically spare him the karma of all of those subsequent killings. Is that Luis?
Okay, I'm going to have to look into that story. It
Yeah,
sounds like it's a Jataka
that's what
tale.
I was thinking of. Thank you, Ben. Mm-hmm.
I'll have to look at I'll have to look at that story before I can comment. Not something I'm aware of. Zoe, go ahead.
Yeah, this is just to add to the stories about the Buddha. I'm recalling now. So my friend told me this story, which he said is from the Vinaya. So it's where a monk was completely taken over by lustful thoughts and couldn't get rid of them. So he took the extreme step of castrating himself. And then the Buddha heard of this, and then the Buddha said to the monk, "You stupid monk, cut the defilements, don't cut yourself."
There you go. There you go. There is a similar story of in the Therigatha, where there is a Arhat nun in the sutta, and she talks about how a man is enamored by her beauty, and he's basically stalking her, and he wants her even after she becomes a nun. And, she says, what is it about me that you really like? And he starts describing, her features. And he said, oh, you like my eyes. So she plucks out her eye, and gives it to him as a, So then she goes to the Buddha, and the Buddha says, don't do that again. And miraculously, the eye comes back. This is in the Therigatha. So there are some extreme examples, I guess, very few examples of something like this. But by no means should that mean that we are condoning castrating yourself or taking out your eye. These are not to be done, please. I hope you understand that, all of you, especially the men. Good. Okay, good. Anyone else? Yes, Helen.
Yes, Delson. I missed out one question that myself to you. I would like to reiterate here and ask if during the meditation, the ongoing of the because when I was following the guide, not during the meditation retreat, but in previous days I have following the guides on the 5 aggregates, the releasing. So in fact, do we use that as also during the meditation to see how the condition, how it gets one step to another to decondition the seeing of the aggregates of how the contact, the feeling, the perception. Do we use that as a intention? Because I was you suggested the sutta to me yesterday on and the Pindika, the advice of what during his sick period. So it was through a steps that I see that it is we have the mind is going through all this to see. So I did not use that in the tool of my meditation, but it works that way, right? So it's naturally bringing us to that understanding of
Yes.
the natural
Yes,
process. Is that correct?
Let me explain. So first and foremost, as you just said, you don't need to make this into an exercise where you have to see the impermanence and all of these things initially. This arises naturally as a result of the practice. The guided meditation, like the guided 5 aggregates meditation, that's an advanced meditation. That's for people who have done this practice for a while. And it was done in a way where you actually go through the jhanic states first, go through nothingness and so on. And then your mind automatically starts to see through the guidance of the meditation audio. Oh, these are the aggregates. And then through understanding and insight into the aggregates, bit by bit, lets go of them and gets into a very deep state. But as an exercise or as a practice, I do not recommend it because it's just a mental exercise that just causes thoughts and nothing more than that. Yeah, that would be my response.
Okay. So we don't actually need to let the mind go through that. At least for my condition at the beginning, is just to do what is necessary to retain my mind in the object as much as. And another question is the resting, which is intended. Is it the you're telling we don't direct our mind, which I always kept in mind, but the expanding part that you mentioned sometimes in the guide, is that the relaxing into means also like the expansion, like it will happen itself, or we have to use that little intention of itself that it will
What are you
relaxing
talking
or
about
resting.
when you refer to expansion? What are you referring
There is a point that we tell our mind to let it relax so it can expand, soft expanding. I remember in the guide, like your guide, expand, let the mind expand. So is that also like, to me, it's rest, is relaxed into rest. Does that make sense with it?
Are you talking about in the 5 aggregate meditation? That's what it says?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, Helen, first of all, whatever I'm giving in that guided meditation, you don't do it on your own. Do it through the guided meditation. You need to get into those states before you can even understand, this whole process. So trying to do it yourself is not going to be the same as doing it with the guided meditation. There's a certain level of awareness and attention that's required for your mind to be able to understand what it means. If you try to do it yourself, it becomes another kind of exercise. So no need to try to understand it that way to do it on your own. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Is there any danger to identifying everything coming up as not self, not me, not myself?
Yes, there is, because it is mentation instead of meditation. This is not self. This is not self. This is not self. It's not meditation anymore. It's a mantra. Oh, this is not self. This is not self. The realization of this is not self happens naturally. What you can do is when you see that the mind is taking something personally, then you recognize that personalization and you let go of that, and the mind naturally lets go of that. Beyond that, there's nothing to do.
In a case like that, I have found it helpful to, like, not as a mantra, but as like something comes up that's really gathering my attention, and I was not mine, not myself.
Yeah, I mean, it can help insofar as you seeing it and saying, okay, yeah, I realize that this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Even with the 6 sets of 6 is a very powerful sutta, which can be used as a guided meditation. It's almost like rhythmic, where the mind is like, this is not me, this is not mine, this is off. But what I'm saying is don't make it into an intellectual exercise where everything that you're seeing is, this is not me, this is not mine. Yes, it can help when you
Right.
see something taking personal and be like, oh, that's not me. This is just a process. Insofar as that, that's fine.
And in that sense of doing it, is there any danger, like a depersonalization or something? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Unless you have, or anybody has, prior situations like that, then they'll have to let us know so we guide them accordingly.
Okay.
Any last questions before we wrap it up?
May we have the reference to the guided meditation you were discussing? Because it sounds interesting and I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, I guess we can send it on the chat as a link in the chat, or we can send it by email. But if you go to Talks by Delson Armstrong and look for 5 Aggregates Meditation, John or David, if you can on that and put it in chat. Okay, so if there is nothing else going once, going twice, 3 times, and we are sold. Okay, that is the official end of the retreat, people. Congratulations. Thank you very much for attending. I had a lot of fun guiding you guys and getting some understanding of where you guys are and helping me understand how better to explain. And thank you for that. Thank you to David and the team at Dhamma Sukha for hosting this retreat on the website and offering all their support. Thank you, John, for all of the back-end stuff that you're doing in the background. And of course, to everybody at Freedom of Mind. So with those closing credits, let's share some merits. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, there we are. Okay, can everybody see this? Okay. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Okay, thank you, everyone, and take care. Bye.
Thank you, Delson.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Many
Delson.
thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Delson.
Thank you, Delson. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. See you around.